Beastmoon Hunt's an event on Wizard101 that begins on the first Tuesday of every month and lasts for 1 week. It pits 2 teams against each other, each composed of 6 players. The first team to earn 100 points, or whichever team has the most points after the 45-minute timer runs out, wins. There's tons of rewards you could get for participating, including spellaments, gear sets, and lunari, a Beastmoon specific resource used to upgrade your forms. You could queue either as a solo player or with a group of friends, but be careful, if you queue with friends you'll be matched up against more difficult opponents than if you queue randomly. Once inside, you pick a form. There are 10 statues to choose from, each of which contains a form for every school. For instance, the Cyclops statue contains the forms Life Cyclops, Death Cyclops, Fire Cyclops, and Balance Cyclops. As you can see, the Cyclops statue is missing some schools, all the statues are, but the developers confirmed they'll release new forms in every future game update, until all 10 statues are filled with every school. Only 1 player on your team per statue. So for instance, you can't have 2 Stormwolves. If someone on your team picks Stormwolf, it'll lock all the Wolf statues forms until that player switches off it. You could switch forms freely throughout the game without penalty. Each form has a deck of predetermined cards. You could use the kiosk in the arena to view all of them. You're also allowed to purchase a certain amount of battle cards from the vendor inside, which are basically treasure cards for main game, except instead of getting put into your sideboard, they're mixed directly into your deck. You could use the lunari you earn from participating in matches to upgrade your forms, but I'll save that for another video. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to make a beast form upgrading guide. Enough about forms for now. Take a look at the map. Both teams have a base, which is your starting point, and where you end up after being defeated. Every time you spawn in the base, there's a short cooldown before being able to explore the rest of the map. You can also freely access your base mid-match if you want to switch forms, buy more battle cards, or get health. All Beastmoon maps contain 5 rings, each corresponding with a shape. There's Sun and Moon, which are 2v2 rings, Eye and Star, which are 3v3 rings, and Spiral, which is the only 4v4 ring. The Spiral ring is locked for the first half of the game. The point system may seem complicated, but it's actually pretty simple when broken down. You earn points by defeating opponents, capturing rings, and winning battles on rings. The first thing you should know is that you earn 2 points for every opponent you defeat. Now let's talk about ring captures. To capture a ring that isn't yours, stand on it. A countdown begins at 30 seconds. If it reaches 0 seconds before an opposing player confronts you, then you'll successfully capture the ring, and you'll earn a number of points based on how many rings your team already has captured. If your team currently has 0 rings and you capture one, you'll get 1 point for it, because you now have 1 ring captured. If your team has 1 ring captured already, you'll get 2 points on your next cap, because you now have 2 rings captured. If your team has 2 rings, you'll get 3 points on your next cap. If your team has 3 rings already, you'll get 4 points on your next cap. And if your team has 4 rings already, you'll get 5 points on your next cap. Lastly, we'll discuss the point system for battling, because you won't always be able to capture a ring left unguarded. If you're standing on a ring that isn't yours, and an opposing player stands on it too, it'll pause the countdown. Then if both players touch, a battle will begin. We'll get into battle mechanics shortly, but for now just know that if you win a battle, you'll earn a certain amount of points based on 3 factors: size of the ring, number of rings already captured, and number of opponents defeated. First, let's start with ring sizes. Winning on a 2v2 ring such as Sun or Moon will earn you a base of 10 points. Winning on a 3v3 ring such as Eye or Star will also earn you a base of 10 points. But winning on a 4v4 ring such as Spiral will earn you a base of 20 points. As for additional points, your team will earn 1 additional point for every ring currently captured after winning the battle, and you'll earn an additional 2 points for every opponent defeated. So consider this example. Your team has all 4 outer rings captured, and you start a battle on Spiral. You win this battle. That'll earn you 20 points because it's a Spiral win, 5 points since all rings are now captured by the end of the battle, and 8 points for the 4 opponents defeated. That's a total of 33 points for simply winning a fight. As you can see, battling is the best way to earn tons of points quickly. You'll notice besides the 5 main rings, there are also a couple outside fights. All outside fights are 2v2. They are initiated by touching an opposing player, just like on rings, but since they are not located on a ring, you will not receive any cap points or battle winning points. The only points you will earn are up to 4 defeat points since there are at max 2 opponents. Usually this means they're a waste of time. and if your team already has a big lead, then it may be worth it to flee immediately to not waste any time. But if your team scores lower than your opponents, sometimes it's worth it to stall opponents in an outside fight as the rest of your team captures rings. And if you alone are stalling 2 opponents in a 1v2 side fight, that puts the rest of your team at a huge advantage for capping rings and winning battles, at the cost of only 2 defeat points. Now that you understand the point system, let's talk about battling. Beastmoon uses very similar battle mechanics as the main game. Each school specializes in certain mechanics that counter other schools. Storm forms cast blades and clear dots. Fire forms cast dots and clear shields. Ice forms cast shields and clear blades. Myth forms cast minions and clear weaknesses. Life forms cast heals and counter minions. Death forms cast weaknesses and counter heals. And Balance School does pretty much everything. That's a very basic overview, by the way. There's a ton of other mechanics carried over from main game as well, like stunning, dispelling, taunting, and pacifying. Something interesting to point out is that drains heal you 100% of the damage to your opponent, instead of in main game, where they only heal you 50%. What you'll notice right away when battling is that Beastmoon uses very simplified values and mathematics. Unlike main game, where spells can deal over 1,000 damage and charms and wards act as multipliers, in Beastmoon, spell values are relatively low, and charms and wards use addition and subtraction. For instance, you'll commonly see a storm form cast a 50 blade on a teammate using a 100 hit. Easy. That hit now deals 150 damage. So all the math can be done in your head even before selecting your card. Every school except for Balance boosts on another school. This is indicated by the school diagram shown on the top left corner of the screen. Storm boosts on Fire, Fire boosts on Ice, Ice boosts on Storm. Myth boosts on Death, Death boosts on Life, Life boosts on Myth. Boosting simply consists of adding 25 damage to whatever damage is being done to the opponent. So, if you use a boosted hit that damages the opponent once, like Zap, it'll deal 25 additional damage. However, if you use boosted damage over time, like Foul Nectar, which lasts 4 rounds, it'll deal an additional 100 damage, since all 4 ticks deal an additional 25 damage. Just like in main game, you have the option to flee a battle. If you flee, that counts as a defeat and will give the opposing team 2 defeat points. So if you're already dead and none of your teammates can heal you, you may as well flee early before the battle ends to save time. But there's one scenario where you don't want to flee after dying, and that's if your team is going to win the battle and you've only been dead for 3 or fewer rounds. Because if your team wins the battle and you've been dead for over 3 rounds, the other team will get your defeat points. But if your team wins the battle and you've only been dead within the 3 final rounds, it does not count as a defeat, and the opposing team will not gain any points from you dying. So in this case, it's definitely worth it to stick around. To recap, you should only flee when you're dead if A, it looks like your team will lose the battle, or B, you've been dead for over 3 rounds even if your team will win the battle. Otherwise, stay. Exit combat cards, commonly referred to as flee cards, are interesting. Every player has the option to purchase these from the vendor in their base. Normally, when you flee in a fight, your spot is locked and another teammate cannot take your place. But if you cast Exit Combat and survive the rest of the round, you will leave the fight without being defeated and a teammate can take your place. Note that if you cast Exit Combat and die that round, it counts as a defeat and no teammates can take your place. If all your teammates in the battle run out of cards, you will lose the battle and be sent back to your base. So you should always keep 1 card remaining in your deck just so you don't run out of cards and force the battle to be over, because sometimes it's worth it to stall a fight while the rest of your team captures rings. You'll notice Beastmoon chests spawning around the map throughout the match. Opening each chest will give you 5 to 10 battle coins, which are used to purchase battle cards, and a Beastmoon treasure card. Beastmoon treasure cards all cost 0 pips to cast and provide some sort of utility, such as a simple blade or shield. The best Beastmoon treasure card is Beastmoon Blessing, since it can allow a non-healing form to revive teammates. If you ever get a blessing, make sure to let your teammates know not to flee because you could heal them. You'll also notice pip wisps hovering around the map. These look like health wisps from main game, except they're white. Each form has a set number of bonus pips you can start a battle with, and you fill these bonus pips by collecting pip wisps. Make sure to always fill up your bonus pips before entering a battle. You should never join a fight without pips. And never join a battle alone either. Pressing tab will open a box that shows the stats of both teams, including which forms each player is using. This comes in handy at the start of each match when you're selecting a form. I advise to wait a moment, see what forms are being used by the other team, and then pick counter forms. For instance, if you see 3 of the 6 opposing players using fire forms, you'll want to choose a storm form to counter them in battle. If you enjoyed this guide, drop a like. Let me know in the comments what other videos you'd like me to make, like a beast form upgrading guide or a tier list. And please subscribe to my channel, we're almost at 1,000 subs. Also check out my Beastmoon Mayhem guide if you haven't yet. Now go rack up those wins and claim the Beastmoon Hero badge. Good luck.